Hello everyone, today we are diving into chapter 2 of class 12 business studies principles of management. In this chapter we are going to talk about the principles, and these principles are not just theory, they are alive in our daily life. Let's start with the word principles. Principles refers to general rules or guidelines. Here we are going to talk about principles of management, that these principles are broad and general guidelines helps the manager to make decision. These principles have been developed on the basis of observation and experimentation. Personal experience or collective wisdom of the manager means through observation and experimentation and personal experiences of all managers and their collective wisdom. Through these basis, these principles are developed. Now, let's see the difference between principles of management versus principles of pure science. Management principles are not as rigid as principles of pure science. In science, there are some principles and those principles are rigid. But it's not same in management principles. Management principles are flexible in nature. Why? Because they deal with human behavior, and these principles are to be applied creatively as per the demand of the situation. Human behavior is never static, means it's never fixed, and neither the environment which affects business. Hence, all the principles may have to be changed as per the situation. Now, let's talk about the relationship between principles, techniques, and values. As you know that principles are broad guidelines, these principles help the manager to take decision or actions become a basis for adopting techniques. Through these principles, the manager take decision and adopt the techniques. Now, what are techniques? Techniques are procedures or methods which involve a series of steps. So, techniques or methods, these are the series of steps that an organization has to take to accomplish desired goals while keeping the guidelines offered by the principles in mind. Values are general desirable norms of behavior, means how the organization has to behave. So these are the general behavior norms, and an organization can't neglect these values. So while practicing the principles of management, these values cannot be neglected. Now let's see the characteristics, features of principles of management. Here, principles of management characteristics are given. Let's talk one by one. Universal applicability, it means these principles are universally applicable. Next, flexibility, these principles can change according to situation. General guidelines, these guidelines refers to basic guidelines related to decision making or the working in an organization. Behavioral approach, cause and effect relationship, contingent, and practice and experimentation. Let's talk one by one. Universal applicability. Principles of management apply to all types of organization. As I told you, the word universal refers to applicable to all. So these management principles apply to all types of organization, whether it's company, school, business, bank. However, the extent of their applicability, means how much these principles are applied, it depends on the situation, and it can vary with the nature and size of the organization. Example, principle of division of work. It's the first and foremost principle. It's division of work. It results in specialized department like marketing and finance. Means when the work is divided according to the specialty of the employees or according to skills of the employees, then it helps the organization to frame specialized department like marketing, finance, etc. Means the work is divided. However, the extent of applicability of this principle will depend on the size of the organization. Means how to apply and to how much this principle can be applied, it depends on the size of the organization, whether the organization is big or small. Next is general guidelines. Real business situations are very complex. Thus, principles do not provide ready-made solutions. The principles of management do not provide ready-made solutions. So, For dealing the day-to-day situations, there are some general guidelines to decision making and help in problem solving. Now let's see an example. Any conflict between individual and organizational interest makes it easier for a manager to follow the general guidelines. The subordination of individual interest to organizational interest. If any conflict occurs between individual and the organization, so a manager can follow the general guidelines that subordination of individual interest can be shifted to organizational interest. Next is, these principles are formed by practice and experimentation. Means these principles are formed through experience and collective wisdom of all managers. Research and experimentation, through research and experimenting on different situations, these principles are formed. Now flexible means changeable. These principles are not rigid, they can be changed according to the situation, they can be modified. While applying the principle of centralization and decentralization, the degree of decentralization may be changed as per the size of organization. Here it's the principle centralization and decentralization. Centralization means the power, the decision making power with top authority, and decentralization means when top authority shifted the decision making power to subordinate. So it's called decentralization, and they focus on specific tasks. So it depends on the size of organization whether an organization is centralized or decentralized. Next is mainly behavioral. The principles of management aim at influencing behavior of human beings. Means the objective is to see the behavior of human beings. They enable a better understanding of the relationship between human and material resources. For example, while layout of factory, emphasis is to be laid on orderliness of both material and human resources. So when a factory is there, in that case emphasis means the more importance is to be laid on orderliness of what? Material and human resources. That's called principle of order. Next, cause and effect relationship. This principle shows what happens if a principle is applied or ignored. So here this cause and effect relationship tells us when we are going to apply a principle, what is going to be happen, and if we ignore the principle, then what are the consequences. Next is contingent. Contingent means these principles are dependent upon the prevailing situation. Means according to the situation, these principles can be changed. For example, principle of remuneration of employees means salary of employees is dependent on the paying capacity of the organization, whether an organization can pay that much amount. So it depends on organization. So here these principles are contingent. It means these principles are dependent upon the prevailing situation at a particular point of time.